Hello everyone, this is Matthew Grant, Managing Editor at MarketingSoft, and I'll be your moderator today. If you have a burning question for one of the presenters today, type it into the Q&A box on the lower left of your screen. I'll be collecting these questions throughout the presentation, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. Also, if you're on Twitter, be sure to add the hashtag B2BLeadGen. That's B, the numeral 2, B, lead gen, to your webcast-related tweets during or after this broadcast. Before we get started, I'd also like to thank Optify for sponsoring today's seminar. Optify is a leading innovator and award-winning provider of digital marketing software for B2B marketing professionals. Their SaaS-based digital marketing suite of tools provides a completely integrated solution for maximizing, measuring, and reporting on inbound marketing, marketing automation, and sales enablement. Optify is specifically designed for digital marketing agencies and small to medium-sized business customers. Today's seminar is How to Drive More Qualified Leads in Today's Buyer-Driven Reality, and our experts are Carlos Hidalgo and Uri Bar-Joseph. Carlos is CEO of the Annuitas Group and has helped clients identify over $700 million of potential revenue by developing and implementing lead management processes. Carlos is also the Executive Director and co-founder of the Marketing Automation Institute, the premier marketing automation community that provides end users with the highest level of vendor-neutral curriculum, training, and certification. Uri heads up Optify's lead generation efforts and can best be described as a marketing decathlete. Adept at all marketing disciplines, Uri is undaunted by tough marketing goals and always strives to win. He exemplifies what it is to be a marketing athlete and pushes tools and programs to their limits to achieve outstanding results. Well, we're very excited to have Carlos and Uri here to present today, so let's go ahead and get started. Carlos, sir, please take it away.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I want to thank Optify as well for this opportunity. This is something I'm quite passionate about, is talking about B2B marketing, and I think if you look over the last few years, we really have one reason and one actually group of people to thank for the rise in B2B marketing, and that's our buyer of today. And if we take a look at our buyers today, we understand a few things, that the overwhelming majority of B2B buyers are engaged socially. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody has a blog. It doesn't mean that everybody is out there active and posting multiple times a day on Twitter. But what it means is that's where they're going to, that's kind of where they're hanging out, and they're talking to each other, and they're talking to the different end users and collecting information. And so that leads us to that second bullet there, that 78% of buyers today in the B2B world begin their purchase by doing some sort of online search, whether it's Google or going to a LinkedIn group. And so the buying process that we experience today has changed dramatically from where it was just 10 years ago. As a result of this online search, 57% of our buyers today actually engage in sales after their initial research is completed. And I think that's really key, and we'll get into that more as the presentation goes along. And then, like never before, buyers are checking at least 10 different sources before they're actually buying. And then if you look at what Gartner has recently put out, by the year 2020, 85% of customers are going to self-manage the buying process, which means they're going to be engaged socially, they're going to be doing more of their search online. And really what this is happening, what this means is marketing now is having to change and become a greater cog in the wheel of go-to-market. And sales, in some respect, in some instances, is being reduced more towards a facilitator of simply that purchase rather than the sole source of information. And so I think if we take a look at the buying process, and this was a process that was made and written about by Robert Jolis, who was previously with the Xerox Corporation, and he said there's 8 different areas or 8 different stops in a buyer's decision cycle. And we can read those there, that it starts with satisfaction and moves into consideration. And one thing that he showed within this buying decision cycle is that the customer spends 84% of their time in the satisfaction and acknowledgement stage. And the acknowledgement stage is simply, hey, Houston, we have a problem. We have a need. We have a pain point. But what he showed during his research is that the typical vendor, and in this case marketing and salespeople, we spend a majority of our time in the selection and investigation phase, where the customer only spends 5% of their time. So what we have to figure out as B2B marketers and as B2B salespeople is how do we then map back to our buyer? And it's really about, how do we generate more high-quality leads? Well, first of all, we map to the needs of our buyer, and we become more buyer-centric. So as an organization or somebody on the phone today who's listening, the question you have to ask yourself is, are we spending an inordinate amount of time in this selection and investigation phase? And how do we better align to our buyer to map to where they're spending the majority of their time? So just some more information before we get really into the meat of it, back to the self-managed buying process or how buyers buy. This was a study by Inquirio Group that looked at the way buyers buy, and in this study they had a 5-step buying process. And you can see that first and foremost, over close to 50% start with an online search, and that drops. But if you take a look at the second step, that green line there, it's then talking to users. And again, talking to users is done a lot through the use of social media. It's not until the latter stages of the buying process where you see this little box here that we see that they're actually talking to their vendors. And so we have seen a fundamental shift where buyers are now taking control and moving through their buying stages without a whole lot of assistance from the vendor. This further proves, this study here that was done, this proves as well this fact that the buyers now not only are in more control, but in essence are taking a little bit longer to buy, which is going to present a whole new set of challenges for marketers in our roles today. 70% of organizations or 70% of contacts after their initial engagement with you as a company are worth a longer-term opportunity. Only 12.5% of these individuals are in a buy now mode. So this underscores the importance for lead nurturing and what we need to do as organizations to nurture or to engage, nurture, and then convert. So the idea of filling out a web form and passing that to sales needs to sell. They don't need to qualify. So make sure, again, if you take a look at the title of this webinar, how to generate more high-quality leads, a high-quality lead is not necessarily somebody who simply fills out a web form and downloads a content asset. We have to understand that the majority of these people are longer-term opportunities, and we have to deploy some lead nurturing around that to make sure that we are indeed generating that high-quality lead for sales. So one of the defaults that a lot of organizations turn to is, hey, we'll just buy the right technology. We'll get the technology in place. We'll get a marketing automation in place. We'll integrate that with our CRM. And then what we'll do is we will see greater effectiveness and greater efficiency in our marketing. And that is fundamentally the wrong way to approach it. I think when you take a look at what technology can offer, there's a lot of things that technology can offer, and technology brings a lot of good things to the table. But you have to understand the technology is going to enable what is already there. And this was backed up by Forrester that talked about being held back because there's organizations that don't have the right processes in place or the right content or the right information in their database, and it's all about the right content for engaging buyers. And fundamentally, if we as marketers want to drive the right high-quality lead to our salespeople, we have to make sure that all of these things are in place in order for us to be most effective. So let's talk about how we do that. And before we do that, what I want to do is make sure that we talk about both the aspects of lead management and demand generation. And I don't think that graphic is coming up as we had planned. But if you take a look at the funnel, which was made, which is very common in B2B speak today, and we have this concept of the lead funnel. We have to understand that on the one side we have this go-to-market strategy that this approach of engaging the buyer through every step of the process with effective content. And then on the other side, we have to make sure that operationally we are aligned with marketing and sales to understand once we do generate that lead at the top of the funnel, how do we continue to create that demand through the funnel and make sure that that person does not leak out of the funnel and we have wasted dollars. So on one side we have the demand generation, the engagement with the buyer through content, and then the alignment and the lead management with marketing and sales and the processes that reinforce what we're trying to do on the demand generation side. And fundamentally, we as marketers and salespeople have to understand that effective nurturing, effective demand gen, it all starts with the buyer. And first and foremost, we have to understand that we have to know who our buyer is. And I am constantly amazed by the number of organizations I go into or that I speak to, and I say, well, who is your buyer? And they say, well, it's a large enterprise company that's over $1 billion. Great. That gives me some sort of macro level account description, but it doesn't let me know who in the organization at a functional level, if I had the opportunity to speak with for 10 minutes, who would that individual look like? So this underscores the need for effective buying personas or ideal customer profiles. And a persona is just a short bio of your typical customer, your typical buyer at the account level and at the function level. It's not necessarily a job description or a job title. It's really about the person that you're looking to get to. It's about that individual who has the decision-making power or has great influence to those who are making this type of decision. And it includes information such on what is their background, what do they do on a day-to-day basis, how are they viewing the problem, and what solutions are they looking to adopt to respond to that problem. And this is solution beyond just technology. And then what's important to this buyer and what challenges do they face in these day-to-day activities. So you may ask the question, well, why is a persona important? Or a lot of times what we get is, yeah, we know we have to get there, but we just don't have the time and we don't have the resources to go out and build that persona. Well, ask yourself the alternative question is, how difficult is it going to be to have a conversation if we don't know who we're talking to? And if you treat everybody the same and you just blast out information, all you're saying is, you know what, we've kind of lumped you all together. We're not too concerned about the individual challenges and the buyers, and you're really telling the buyer that you're not as interested in their needs as you should be, and you're not going to architect your content accordingly. The other thing is it will help you from a sales perspective. It'll help sales better zero in on the exact conversations that they need to have rather than sending them over a name that's filled out a web form and simply saying, hey, maybe this guy's the one or maybe this lady's the person to talk to, but if not, why don't you find out the rest of the organization? The creation of effective personas really hones in and helps us develop a higher quality lead by to sales. And one of the ways we get there is making sure that sales is involved in helping us define and develop these personas. Sales has such a unique relationship with our buyers, and they hold so much information. So not only taking a look at marketing's perspective, but take a look at sales perspective, and then also call a few customers and find out what roles they're in, what did they do from a decision-making process. Probably one of the most enlightening things for me recently was I went to one of our clients' customer conferences, and I got to interview about 25 of their customers and ask them all about their day-to-day work, how they use their solution, how they engage with them as a company, what was their buying process like, what were their challenges, and I walked away with a completely different view of their customers, but also a different view of my client because I was able to see my client through another set of eyes. And so as you start to undertake this buying persona work, understand that you have to make that you want to get a full view. So from sales, the customer, and then if you have a customer support or customer service arm as well, involve that kind of insight because it'll help you make better decisions in finalizing your personas. So one of the things, as I mentioned, that we hear a lot of, I really don't have the time to get started on the buyer persona, or we don't have the time to do it the right way. We've just got to keep things moving forward. This is a template that you can use to simply start something and say, hey, let's take a look at these different functions. Let's identify the 4 top functional areas in the organization that we know are involved in the decision making. And then let's jot down a couple of bullets on their background, their activity, the challenges, and what's their compelling event that they're going to use to make this decision. If we simply start there and then start to build a score model based on some of these, you'll be well down the path to a better overall delivery of content and a better overall lead. And so as we make this presentation available after today's event, please feel free to use this type of template, bring it to your teams, walk through it, and at least start somewhere and start to build this. And you'll find that once you do it the first time, the second, third, fourth time, as you append and as you collect more information and get to know your buyer better, it becomes easier. So now that we've defined the buyer persona, we have to now understand what paths to purchase each of these personas take. And again, this is really mapping the key steps to their purchase and then making sure that it's integrated or mapped back to the individual buyer personas. If you take a look here at the functional levels, the manager is going to view their purchase much different than a CXO. So understand what those buying paths look like and then use that to dictate how you're going to stack your content or how you're going to architect your content to message individually to each of those personas. So if you have the steps in the buying journey of awareness, interest, evaluation, and purchase, again, start simple. Identify those 4 steps and say, what kind of content do we need to offer to a manager level at the awareness stage versus what kind of content would the CXO be interested in at the awareness stage. So if you understand the buyer persona and the path they take to purchase or their journey, this will help guide your content offer and your content development. So when we talk about offers, so many times it's this default of, well, let's just put out a white paper. Understand that an offer is content that is value to the visitor or the prospect. An offer can be something that's very small. I've seen very good offers that are simply 30-second videos. So don't be scared off by that. And understand that offers can be used across multiple channels. So don't get, if you have a technology such as an automation, don't get so caught up in an email-only type of medium. Make sure that you're spreading this across multiple ways to reach the buyer, because the buyers will engage with your content differently at each and every stage and through different medium. I love social media. When people reach out to me over social media, I'm much more open to that type of response than if I receive a phone call or an email. That's my personal preference. So again, make sure you're mixing up the delivery of your offers based upon the persona and how their purchase path works. Understand, too, that quality counts when it comes to your content offers. So just because I receive something on an email today or just because I download something today doesn't mean I'm going to read it today. I may read it on a cross-country airline trip or a flight from New York to California simply because that's the first time I've had the time to sit down without interruption and look at that offer, and it may be 60 days. So make sure you have a good shelf life and make sure that you're repurposing your content. So what does that look like? Well, if you write a blog post, consider taking that blog post and turning it into a whiteboard video that lasts 90 seconds. Then turn that into a podcast. Then take parts of that blog post and turn them into Twitter feeds, which you can use in the 140 characters with a link back to the blog post. So as you start to develop offers and look at the content to drive to get to a more high-quality lead, make sure that you are actually thinking about how can I maximize this to make sure that it's being delivered in a way that is going to engage my buyer at every step and ultimately turn over a higher quality lead to sales. So now that we understand what the offers are and how the offers should map to the buyers and their buying journey, now we're ready to actually start to put together our content offer map. And you see here, and I apologize that this is a little bit scrunched, but as we send out the presentation later, you'll be able to see this more clearly. You see at the top line the awareness phase, the research phase, the decision, and the purchase phase. And you see here that we have the content that is listed that should be used in this stage of the journey. And again, you'll have one of these for each one of the different buying personas. And again, it may start very small. It may not even be this complex. But now that you have that map, then you can start to put together your campaigns that focus in on the individual buying stages and at the individual persona level, and really zero in on your target and give them the content that's going to engage them in every step of their buying process. Again, as you develop this, it is vital as marketers that we involve our salespeople. Sales, again, I'll repeat it. It probably won't be the last time, but they have a very unique perspective on our customers, and they have a very unique perspective on our buyers. And we have to get their insight, and we have to get their buy-in into, and their collaboration into how we're going to design this. So again, there's really no, in my view, not a marketing department that only takes it and then hands it off to sales. It's marketing and sales working together and aligning around what's best for the buyer to make sure that we're producing the best content and helping the buyer make the most informed buying decision possible. So this is one of my last slides, and then I'm going to hand it over to Ori. But as we talk about content, as we talk about the buying journey, it's very important as we look at our personas to also understand what's their content consumption. And this gets back to some of this buying path. So as you look at your different buyers and the different level of buyers that are going to be involved in this purchase process, understand that they're going to take different routes to make this decision. So this was actually taken from a blog that we just read about where we were involved in a deal where at the very beginning of the deal, which is all the way to the left here, in the satisfaction stage, and we used the different stages from Jolie's chart that we showed earlier, both the decision maker and the influencer were very involved at a very high level from in the early discussions. As we moved to acknowledgement, the decision maker basically dropped off and dropped out of the day-to-day dialogue and the ongoing dialogue that we were having with our then prospect, now client. Now, we knew full well that the decision maker had told his influencer, you're going to be the one driving this and engaging with the different vendors. Feed me the information as you see fit. But I don't want to be involved in the discussion. So at that point, to try to reach him and engage him with marketing and email and everything else was almost futile. So we turned our focus from an engagement path to that influencer. Now, an interesting thing happened is as we started to get to the selection phase, the influencer started to fade, and our interaction with that influencer really started to drop off, and the decision maker reappeared as the one driving the final decision and making that final decision. So again, as we started to look at this, we had two different buying paths and two different paths of content consumption. And the buying path for the influencer took 6 steps, but for the decision maker, as far as we were concerned, really took 2 steps. And so it's very important that you understand that, because this really helped us as we started to look at content consumption patterns of our buyers. It really helped us understand who should we target, when is that person really a quality lead that sales has to engage with, and then how do we engage with that person at the right time and at the right moment with the right content. So I'm going to turn this over to Ori now and have him really take further what I've laid out from a basis perspective on developing the right persona and the right buying journey so you can develop the right content so you can produce a more high-quality lead. Ori, take it away.
Thank you, Carlos. This was fantastic. I just want to reemphasize like 2 points that you made in that presentation that I think are extremely important. And the first one, and you hear it all the time, and it's very basic, but not all the time you actually understand it to the fullest extent. At the end, it's all about the customer, and it's all about the customer need. The need is in the center of everything that we do, both from a marketing perspective and later on in the sales funnel. And the second point is related. It's not just about us as marketers. It's about the entire process from the beginning throughout the entire marketing and sales process, which means that you have to involve your sales team. If you have an inside sales team, then you need to involve them in that process, because the purchase cycle spans throughout the entire marketing and sales funnel. So if you were only thinking about the marketing elements of that
process, you're only working on maybe half of that process at best.
Absolutely.
With that, I want to jump into my portion of the webinar, and I'm going to talk more tactically about how you use visitor and lead intelligence in your marketing and sales activities, and more specifically, how do you take that intelligence and translate it into an actionable plan, and how do you take all that information and put it into use with the personas that you develop and throughout the marketing and sales funnel. So before I jump into that, I want to talk a little bit about what is that visitor and lead intelligence, what type of intelligence you can gather with the available systems out there, and obviously Optify is one of them, and that is the main reason why we're doing that type of a webinar. But the type of intelligence that we gather is over the lifetime of a visitor to our website, we collect multiple data points about that person, starting from their the first anonymous visit to your website. We collect the referral source, their behavior on the website, and using technology and known public databases, we can also append firmographic data. Firmographic data is basically data about the firm, about the company, like the company name, the domain, the size of the company, the number of employees, the revenue, their actual location, their headquarter location, the industry, the ownership, all of that information that is publicly available, we can append to an anonymous visitor. So even before they became a lead, in their early awareness stages, you already gather a little bit of information about them. And then when that visitor comes back to your website and they submit a form, essentially converting into a known lead, now you start collecting more information about them. You start knowing who they actually are based on the information that they gave you in that form. You also record an event of conversion. This is where we usually say that when a visitor transforms into a lead, it's where the event of someone moves from the awareness stage to perhaps the research and consideration stage. It's somewhere in those stages of the buyer journey. And then when they come back to your website, they give you more information. This event also makes the anonymous visitor to a known lead, and now you have more information about the actual person using the information that they provided on the form, as well as their entire website history. So now you know who they are, where they came from. You can also update their firmographic. If they gave you an updated company name, an updated address, now you can make updates to the previous information that you collected. And you know more than just who they are, but you also have their entire website history, as I said before. But this intelligence takes time to collect, and putting together those data points takes time and obviously software. It also only gives you the explicit data that they provided or that you collected about their firmographic, demographic, and website behavior. But knowing who they really are, mapping that explicit data into the personas and into the stage in their purchase cycle takes some guesswork. This is where you as a marketer need to apply some intuition and some of the work that you've done in developing those personas to translate this explicit data that you collected and that they provided you with to more of the implicit need that you think that they have. So how do you put those pieces together? Basically, you collect those pieces of data over time, but you start slowly with putting those pieces together and mapping the behavior over time to a persona and a stage. You start with a campaign that they originally came from to your website. If it's an inbound campaign or an outbound campaign, you then add all the other sources that you have about them. If they came to an offline event like a trade show or a webinar, or you met them in a networking event. And then you add the responses to some nurture campaigns, or how they reacted to a paid ad or a retargeting ad that you have out there. You then add all their activity on the website, and slowly, piece by piece, you put together a clear picture of that lead. You add all the information that you gathered all the time, and then you can also append some public data, like, as I said before, like firmographic data or social data like LinkedIn, what LinkedIn provides you with. And again, piece by piece, you put together a clear picture of that person, and you try to map it to a persona that you developed. So at the end, what you have is all the firmographic data and all the behavior data. And you can use it on the individual level. You can also use it as a marketer in aggregate to see what type of campaigns that you have ran drove the right personas, and how those personas reacted to some of the content offers or other offers that you've put out there. And with this intelligence, you now have a better grasp of what is working and what not to move those people, to move those personas down the marketing and sales funnel. We like to describe, and if you attended previous webinars that we've done, you've seen this framework before. I really like this framework because I think it captures the work of the marketer or the never-ending work of the marketer in those simple 5 steps. I'm going to focus on steps 3 to 5, from planning, setting up, and executing campaigns through delivering your leads to your sales team, and then measuring and reporting on your lead intelligence, on your results, because those steps are where visitor and lead intelligence comes into play the most, in my opinion, and then they help you to refine the work that Carlos has talked about previously, about defining the buyer profile and those personas, and knowing who they are and where they are in the buyer cycle. So we're going to start with talking about planning, setting up, and executing the campaign. And what a lot of marketers fail to do, and I've seen that over and over again, is that the setup of your marketing campaigns is extremely important, because it enables you to collect that data and that intelligence in a way that will later help you to analyze your campaigns, and not just your campaigns, but also enable you later to know what personas came to your website, what personas reacted to your offers, and where they are in their buyer cycle, so you can deliver only on-target leads to your sales team. So the setup of your campaigns, as I said before, is extremely important. I like to use this framework with every offer that we put out there, and this is the way that we tag offers. We say what campaigns they're related to, and this is where you say if this is a lead generation campaign, a nurture campaign, or maybe it's a sales campaign, because campaigns are not just at the top of your funnel, they're also throughout, as I said at the beginning. Your campaigns are throughout the marketing sales process, so even if you have opportunities, people who are already in the consideration and the purchase stages, you are still running campaigns to try to push them slowly to the purchase decision. So those campaigns also need to be tagged. So you put the campaign information. You also put information about lead scoring, because lead scoring, as I will show in a few minutes, is extremely important when the time comes to deliver those leads to your sales team. And then the other tagging for your offers. You want to know the actual offer, the name. You want to know the source that offer is being put out there. And you want to know a little bit more information about those offers. A lot of it is being done with form fields and hidden fields on your forms. And some of it is being done On the URL tagging, this is an example of how Optify tags URL. So every URL that you put out there, every link that points back to your website or to an offer, to a landing page on your website is being tagged appropriately so the information will flow back to you. So after you've set up your offers, you now want to put together the framework that will help you answer the main questions that you want to answer. And this is, for example, a framework that we've put together and we like to work with because it answers most of our questions. And the questions are, what sources work the best? What type of channels driving the highest number of leads, the highest number of engagements, the highest number of opportunities and conversion rates? What offers are actually working? And what personas are actually coming back to us? Now, if you pivot this information, you now can start slicing and dicing this information to gain even more insight. For example, I want to answer the simple question about what offers drove what personas at the highest engagement. So in order to answer that question, I need to know the performance of each of my offers, the performance of each of my personas as it relates to those offers, and the actual performance in the pipeline. How many leads, how many opportunities, and how many deals I closed. So in order to know all of that, again, you need to go back and make sure that you've set up everything in a way that will help you have the information, the data flows into your framework in a way that later will help you analyze it and gain the insight. After you've set everything up, you need to test it. I'm going to run through this quickly because testing is an important part of every marketer's work. You've set everything up. You want to test that the framework and the process is working. And after you do that, hopefully, once you start executing your campaigns, the leads are starting to flow in. And your leads are starting to respond to your campaigns. And this is the time to deliver those leads to your sales team. You want to make sure that you only deliver the high-quality leads, the leads that are on target. And when it comes to delivering leads to sales, there are 4 methods. The check marks that I had in the original slide are not showing up. But there are 4 methods, and each method uses lead intelligence in a different way. The first method is lead scores. You set up lead scores that are built on indicators that sum up to a score or a threshold that at that point you deliver those leads to sales. I'm going to talk a little bit about lead scores in a few seconds, but lead scoring is actually using the intelligence, the lead intelligence, the data that you provided, like the source of the lead, their title, their location, the behavior on the website, on your website. All of those lead intelligence data points help you to score better your leads and then decide what type of leads you're going to deliver to your sales team. The second method is lead qualifiers. You can actually use people to qualify your leads. Those are, in some companies, those are called telemarketers, or inside sales is a more common name, or just lead qualifiers. Those are people who will follow up with every single lead that you generate to qualify them, to make sure that they fit the personas that you develop, the people who you know will buy your product. The lead qualifiers will use lead intelligence, the data that you provide them over time, to qualify your leads better, to follow up with those leads in a more intelligent way. The third method is self-qualifying. You can use forms on your website and questions on your website to have leads self-qualify themselves. For example, you can use questions on form questions like, are you interested in this solution? And if they say no or yes, this is a way for them to self-qualify them and for you to collect that information about them, so you can only deliver the people who raise their hand and say, I am interested in buying your solution. Those people show explicitly that they are in a different stage in the buyer process. So using questions on forms and explicit data that tells you if those people are interested in your product or solution helps you qualify them or will help you make them self-qualified. The fourth method is a full self-serve process, like a buy now button. You can build your entire online process in a way that it pushes people to self-serve. But you use lead intelligence and the data that you collect over time to present them with the right offers based on where they are in their purchase process. So if you know that they're only in the awareness stage based on the intelligence that you gathered over time, you're not going to offer them to buy your product right now because they're not yet in that process. But if they start a free trial, telling you that they're in the evaluation stage, this is the time where you automatically can present them with offers to buy your products and services. So those four methods using lead intelligence can help you deliver the right leads to your sales team. But how do you do that with the lead intelligence? We like to think about lead intelligence on two axes. And this is also how we like to think about scoring. One is profile, and the other one is behavior. When you build personas, you talk more about, you talk in a combination of profile and behavior. You first of all define the profile of your persona. You say what companies, what industries they are coming from, their titles, their role in the purchase decision, and then you talk a little bit about their behavior. You say what type of content they consume, where they do their research online, or where they do their research in general, whether it's online or offline, what type of events they will show up for. So that information, a combination of their profile and behavior, can use to put together, to decide what are those on-target leads. What are those personas that no matter what you want to deliver to your sales team. And once you put those together, now you can let the information that you collect online about those leads flow into that framework and decide automatically what leads are ready to be delivered to your sales team. For example, if they're on target in terms of their profile, if they are the exact person, the exact persona that you want to have your salespeople talk to, you can ignore their website behavior altogether because you know that those type of people, those type of personas are the right fit for your company. But if they're only okay in terms of their profile, for example, they have the right title, but they're not necessarily in the right industry, now you infuse the behavior on your website to know if they are ready to buy and if they are the right lead that you want to deliver to your sales team. So you filter on profile and you score on behavior. And then you enable your sales team intelligently follow up. You give your sales team all that behavior, all that information that you collected about those leads over time to have them follow up the right way with your leads. You give them all their visit history. You give them the form that they completed. You give them all that intelligence about those leads so they can follow up with them in a way that makes sense. And then you enable them to prioritize and focus. As I said at the beginning, this is not just about marketing. This is about marketing and sales. You need to make sure that you enable your sales to do their job, to follow up with the right leads, and to follow up with the leads in a way that fits those leads. This is an example of a daily email from Optify where we score all those leads, and our sales team can use those scores to actually prioritize their call down list and call the hottest leads first. So after you deliver those leads to sales, you now need to measure, report, and refine those campaigns. And you use lead intelligence to do that as well. I showed you the framework that we put together at the beginning. That framework helps us to answer those main questions. What type of channels drove the highest engagement? What type of offers drove the personas that we were most interested in? And what personas converted at the highest rate? So once you start executing your campaigns, you just let the data flow into your framework. And after you collected all that data, you now can pinpoint the places in that framework that answer your main questions. Like, for example, you can see here that offer number 1 actually delivered less leads than expected, and offer number 3 had a higher conversion rate from leads to opportunities. We can also see that the persona of the profile number 2 for our buyer persona converted at the highest rate from leads to opportunities. So now we can say, okay, if this persona converts at the highest rate for these specific offers, maybe we should keep going after this persona with these type of offers, with this type of content, with this type of online offers that we put out there. And with that, I'm going to move to the key takeaways. I think, Carlos, you're gonna start first, and I want to leave enough time for us to answer some of the questions.
Yeah, thank you. I really think, first and foremost, as I said, kind of at the kickoff, successful demand generation and being able to deliver a high-quality lead to your salesperson has to start with the buyer. So as you start to develop your programs, look at your campaigns, and integrate and align with sales around this, understand it's not, it's the way you're going to align with sales from a marketing perspective is to get the focus on the buyer and become buyer-centric. Also understand that technology in and of itself is not enough. Technology is an enabler, and I think Lori just did a great job at showing how it does enable you to deliver that higher quality lead. But again, without the knowledge of the buyer, their content consumption patterns, how they view content and what content is relevant to them, technology can only do so much. And then also understand that there is, in today's organizations with the complex B2B buying cycles, there's usually more than one buyer. So understand the different roles that each of them play and message to them individually.
Yeah, and just to recap what I said in the last 20 minutes is the first thing that, in my opinion, and I completely agree that the software, the technology is an enabler. You need to have the insight first and foremost about your persona, but then you need to, in order to validate that those assumptions, and in order to then answer some of the main questions about what resonates with them, you need to know what data you want to collect. And you need to set up your campaigns in a way that they can collect that data that will help you answer those questions. And then you always need to be open to what you will find. In a lot of the cases, we have some assumptions and we have some hypotheses that are later being rebutted by the actual data. So be open what the data will tell you, and put your trust in the work that you've done before. And over time, as you collect more and more data, you will be able to validate or rebut those assumptions and just, get better over time. And that's what visitor and lead intelligence allows you to do. It gives you the data and enables you to just get better time after time again.
All right, this is Matt once again. So thank you, first of all, Carlos and Uri, for that great presentation. We got a bunch of questions so far, so I want to dig into those since we have about 10 minutes or so to cover them. So we got, as always, we get a lot of, when people talk about personas, we get a lot of questions about the creation of personas, what kind of personas, and things like that. So I just wanted to dig into those. So first of all, I guess, Carlos, maybe you could take the first swing at these. K.R. Vincent asks, the target individual will be surrounded by key influencers in the B2B. As you pointed out, of course, there's an important relationship between influencer and the decision maker. For example, this person writes, an operations chief will be flanked by engineering. How does this affect your formula? And the way I'm hearing this question is, do you actually create personas for buyers as well as influencers? How do you work those two roles into the persona development process?
Yeah, that's a great point. If you look at the chart or the graph that I showed at the very end there, where it was that influencer versus the decision maker and kind of their consumption pattern with our content from a sales perspective, we really did target each of those. Now, in that case, it was really two individuals, but I believe the name was Kay. I think in her individual, you've got multiple people in engineering, and so we really refer to those as buying committees. And even very rarely today do you have somebody who is the one sole budget holder, decision maker. The larger in the organization you get, you're also going to have folks that you do battle with over at procurement. So even to a lesser extent, including them. So understand who are the key influencers, who are the key decision makers, and the short answer is yes. Develop personas for each of those people. And obviously, to do that all in one full swipe is going to be quite an undertaking. So start with who are the most influential as part of that buying committee. Start with 1, 2, or 3, build those out, and then once you take the lessons and the learnings from doing that, make sure you're tending to those and adding to those, but also building out more kind of in a concentric circle perspective. So that would be my approach to it.
All righty. And I think you touched on this other question that we got from someone who works for evo.nl, which is, as he explains, it's a member organization for the logistics and transport business over there in the Netherlands. This person writes, this is an easy job with a small amount of buyers. So I just as an aside, creating personas is never just totally an easy job. But right? So, but he writes, my company is a member organization with 20,000 members and over 100,000 influencers. We want to know the buyers' backgrounds. Do you have any tips? So, yeah, if you have sort of a sprawling organization, what's the best way to sort of chip away at creating these personas?
Well, I would say first and foremost, he's got a lot of job security for the next few years. But I really think it's starting with who are those most influential. So if we take a universe of, say, 20,000, that is a huge universe. You could probably bucket those 20,000 into some major groupings. Let's say we know that 30% are from this area, and I'm not familiar with the transportation industry, so I'm being rather general on purpose. But we know that 30% are in this bucket, and 25% are in this bucket, and 25% are in that bucket. And so it kind of gives you some breakdowns in what those groups are. I think to say I'm going to build a persona for each and every individual of that 20,000, that's not what we're advocating, and that's not what we're getting at. I think it's making some educated guesses and making sure that you have an understanding of what is that typical type of person, understanding that each one is going to have their individual nuances, but by and large, with about 75 to 80% of certainty, we know that our typical buyers and our typical influencers do this, serve this role, have these challenges, and look at their solutions to their challenges. So that's how I would approach that for such a large mass audience.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to highlight. When you're creating personas, you're not writing a biographical sketch of every individual buyer you interact with. You're bucketing people and you're just trying, some companies make the mistake, as you pointed out, of sort of aggregating at this super high level in terms of how much of what Rory was calling firmographic data. Oh, we want buyers who are at these big companies. So you just want to get more detail from that without getting into the nitty-gritty granularity of 100,000 personas.
Right, and I think the other thing we have to understand, it's, the example I always use is an interpersonal relationship. Whatever relationship you have that are most dear to you, whether it's a spouse, a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, those things didn't happen overnight. you know, we didn't meet our spouse. I didn't meet my wife on the first day and all of a sudden say, I'm so madly in love with you, we want to get married. But we fostered a relationship. And so I think when we think of personas, we think of this kind of set it and forget it, and then we walk away. As you collect more of that demographic and firmographic information, you're going to be building these personas. That's why we gave you that template, is to say this is a great place to start. But over the course of the year, as you look at some digital body language and you have more discussions and you see what content resonates, you're going to find out so much more about that persona, and you're going to be able to build a persona. We've built personas that simply have like 6, 7 characteristics to start. In the course of the year, you could fill up half a page with the different characteristics. So it really is a progressive kind of dynamic approach to building these personas, not a one-time static event.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, I just want to add something to that. I think it's a great point because we hear that a lot because, especially with businesses and marketers that just start, you don't have a lot of information. You don't really know, the personas. You've got to start from somewhere. So I always say just put something out there and start validating it. The framework that we showed helped you. It's a loop. It helps you start even from nothing, gain some data, gather some data, gain some insight, refine it, and start all over again. That's what that is one of the greatest things about visitor and lead intelligence. It gives you the data to first of all build those personas, but also to validate them over time and refine them. So that data that you collect over time helps you do that.
Right, and as you said, too, I mean, data is just data. You need a framework, you need hypotheses, you need an approach in order to make sense of it and do something with it, which I thought you stressed a lot in your presentation. And we got a question here for you, Ori, from M. McConnelly, who wrote, what's the biggest mistake that people make when gathering and using lead intelligence?
So I would actually say 2 of them because they're a little different. The first one is as I started, and that's why I talked a lot about setting up, because I think one of the biggest mistakes that marketers do is that they buy a technology and they think that they solved all their problems, especially with visitor and lead intelligence. They think that once they bought the technology and installed it, it's done. It's going to do all the work for them, and that is that is a very wrong assumption. Even if it's called marketing automation, it doesn't really do the work for you. At the end of the day, you need to take that information, you need to take that intelligence and analyze it. You need to set it up correctly for your business. There is no one solution fits all. You buy it, but you need to set it up in a way that makes sense for your own marketing and sales process. If your process is leads come in and go to an inside sales team and then move to a direct sales, you need to set up the process and the lead intelligence to support all those stages. But if your process is just visitors are coming to your website, they convert into a lead and go directly into direct reps, that's a different setup altogether. So just buying lead intelligence software doesn't really solve all your problems. That's one. And 2, and we just talked about this, is lead intelligence, the data that you collect, helps you validate your assumptions, refine them, and help you to know how to better follow up with your leads. If you don't look at that data on a continuous basis, on a regular basis, and refine your assumptions, they're going to be outdated very quickly, and you're going to make the wrong decisions. So I would say the 2 biggest mistakes is just launching and forgetting. You should never do that. And secondly, not going back and reevaluating your assumptions.
Right. It's like, well, we're collecting the data, so that was our goal. But the goal is actually using it to improve your process. So, all right. Well, thank you very, very much. That's all the time we have for questions. So thanks again to you, Carlos, and to you, Ori, for all this great information and approach to buyer persona creation, lead management, and collecting and using lead intelligence. I hope everyone enjoyed the broadcast. I also want to thank, once again, our sponsor, Optify, for bringing this seminar to you. Listener, we truly value your feedback, so please fill out a very quick survey listed here on this slide. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you again very soon. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.